Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Darrell Denton, the former mayor of Tennessee. Ooh, we have stepped up to another level to interact here for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Well, now that I have fed and I am fully charged and ready to stalk the Dogman, without further ado, it is time for Darrell Denton and myself to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. We have a good friend of mine, and also, he doesn't consider himself a legend, but I do. We have the former Tennessee mayor and also the Tennessee Bigfoot man, Darrell Denton, who is in the house tonight hanging out with us. How are you doing, Darrell?
Hey, I'm doing great, Kenny. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thanks for popping back in. I mean, the audience would have never known, but I'll tell them, unfortunately, we did have a previous episode, but I had a little technical difficulty where apparently Skype didn't like me and corrupted our video. So it's great to definitely get you back on here so that way we can redo this and get out some pretty imperative information. What have you been up to lately?
Well, we just finished up I don't know, our Martin Groves and my good friend Mike Smith, and our documentary just came out. It landed last Saturday, I think. It's on, I think, on Hulu. It's on several, but it's the Small Town Monsters documentary. There was like 4 trailers coming up to that, and that Martin Groves, my best friend, and I were on. And then they just released the final episode that's on those particular menus, which is, I think, there's 5 or 6 that's on with YouTube. So um, anyway, that's what we've been doing. We've just been playing a little bit for that, and that took us quite a few. Took us quite a bit of time into LBA, Land Between the Lakes, last October, and we've been kind of looking forward to that. And preparing to go to 2 conferences coming up, one next Saturday and one Saturday week. And I just stay busy as much as I can. I love what I do, and I like talking about the real and the encounters and experiences I've had.
Totally excellent right there. And I do definitely appreciate your research aspects and how busy you are staying with the grind, my friend. And I actually saw that episode, and I'm pretty good friends with Aaron Deese and Heather Mosser from Small Town Monsters. They actually popped on recently, and I got to get out their episode as well. And I did some collaborations with Jamie King and Brian Seach from Small Town Monsters too. So
Oh
definitely
man, all those people, every one of the crew there are just super. You know, Seth Breedlove all the way down to Heather Moser, like you said. You know, Aaron Deese is super. The whole crew, Eli, I like the Eli White and the whole crew, just super nice to us, and I'm just honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense, and that's totally excellent. I actually have not ever had a chance to talk to Seth or Eli, and Heather and Aaron are actually telling me that Seth kind of doesn't really do the podcast thing too much because I did want to get him on as well to make sure that he didn't feel like I was leaving him out of the loop when I got the rest of the squad on. But Aaron and Heather both told me it's not really his forte, but they did forward on the fact that I do think highly of him to him. So that was pretty cool stuff, man. And when it comes to the Dogman stuff, what have you been up to lately? Any sort of new information or thoughts as to what's occurring?
Well, there's been quite a few. We've received some information from Land Between the Lakes, which is the area we mostly, research now, and we get updates there from witnesses and different people regularly. And I'd rather not tell how we get some of the information, but some of it is just from eyewitness people that's been there and seen things or had encounters and things happen to them. There's quite a few things that's been going on. There's a rumor of a man that was found floating in the lake after he tried his best to holler at some people in a boat because he was frightened by something chasing him from the woods to the shoreline, and actually threw rocks at this particular creature supposedly. And we are looking into that particular incident because it seems like it's pretty true and pretty real, but these people thought the guy was crazy and they were scared to pull over and talk to him. So they came back by a little bit later. They were trying to get to a boat ramp to unload their boat, and this guy was floating in the water. So this rumor is that something killed him and threw him in the water. So when I say rumor, I don't have every evidence of this, but we're getting some pretty credible data from people in that area that this really happened. And there's also rumor of a child being attacked up there by some type of creature in the last couple of months.
Jeez, that's definitely some pretty messed up stuff right there for sure. And recently I was putting together a promo video for Jody and the North American Dogman Project where we took Glenn's encounter from the LBL, which
Oh
I
yeah,
believe
yeah,
you and I have spoken about that before.
sure.
And that came out really good as well. And that's some pretty much nightmare fuel. Again, we weren't there with Glenn. I mean, so we can't fully, I guess, verify what he did see, but we were able to verify his paycheck stubs and the fact that he worked for Kentucky Wildlife and Fish and Game, and that he did do what he said, stalking the lake with fish and just making sure people had their permits and etc. So we are able to verify all that. And it's definitely pretty intriguing as to what could have occurred. I mean, I'm a big believer that cave hyenas, as well as the short-faced cave bear, the Dinopithecus, dire wolves. I mean, 10,000, 11,000 years ago is a blink of the eye. So I personally believe those animals never really did go extinct. There is no reason for them to. The climate in the areas that they lived has not changed that much. And also, the environment in cave systems has definitely not changed. And for example, 90% of the time, a short-faced cave bear would be in the cave systems. They'd come out, get their food, go back in, and just roam all around. And we have a spelunker that has joined the North American Dogman Project, and she was saying that only around 10% of the cave systems actually touch the surface. So when Glenn was speaking about, that massive hyena, more or less, and we all know the cave systems in Kentucky and across the rest of the United States, it's just really interesting for sure.
Well, if you look at the cave systems, I've studied this for quite a number of years. Being a good friend of mine, Rick, he out of Canada. Well, he's actually out of Canada. He and I studied that for quite a while, along with the ley lines. And the ley lines have a lot to do with the cave system too, by some reason, by where they overchange, and there's numerous ones crossing each other. And if you're not familiar with ley lines, it's a magnetic type field that these things go across the country everywhere. You may have one running through your backyard, but where these things tend to overlap numerous times, it seems to pinpoint a cluster area. And in that cluster area, there seems to be If you lay this on top of the U.S. map, I'm talking about the United States map, it pretty much lines up with the cave systems that we know of on the United States map. If you lay the cave system across that United States map, along with the ley lines, you can see where these patterns crisscross over and over. And those particular areas seems to be some of the areas that there are clusters of people missing. So I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't personally think anything's a coincidence. But when you look at it, that's the way it reads. There's numerous ones that come out like that. So I can't quite see how that could be a coincidence. And I do agree with her. It's probably 10%. I would think is probably a large number of the cases that meet, the outside. I'm sure there's a lot more under. I'm really not sure what's existing out underneath there or what's still running around in the wilderness of North America. But I know there's a lot of things that people don't know about because I've seen several of them, and I wouldn't believe them myself unless I seen them.
Makes sense for sure. And yeah, as you said, there's definitely something occurring in the national forest and near the cave systems. I mean, there's three things that everybody can't refute is that people are missing. People are missing in national forest near cave systems. And we have unknown tracks as well as sightings coming in. So it is super important for people to definitely just step back and try to look at the topic and be subjective and objective. And I mean, we have a science team. Like I said, we got an environmentalist, a biologist, we have a spelunker, we have a master tracker and survivalist, we have a geologist. So, I mean, these are all people with scientific credentials and they can't really be pushed aside. Like, I'm just a journalist. So, I mean, if somebody is, hey, you're not a scientist, you don't have any sort of fancy letters in front of your name, 100% true. And I have no problems with that. I don't get offended, but that's why I got a science team to
Sure.
defer. So, yeah, and now it's really hard once people sit down with the science team to start, just pushing away their thoughts because that's what science wants is people that are educated in the scientific field, and all those individuals are. So it's really important, like I said, to make sure that we do have specialized individuals that can shed light onto things and figure out whether or not it was just a fox or a coyote making strange vocalizations or if it's something that is unknown. And it is, like I said, super important to make sure that we are doing that. And when it comes to some other Dogman stuff, what is maybe one of your more terrifying cases you've worked on yourself or potentially experienced?
Well, the documentary that we just finished up with back in October that just came out, it was, like I said, 4 or 5 trailers of it, and it kind of goes through with Martin and I telling parts in several of them, and then on the end, it's more about our particular experience that we had there. I've had, me personally, I've had 3 encounters with a dog man. The first one was completely different than the other 2. The first one was more like a flesh and blood creature that I seen in Tazewell County, Virginia, in October of 2021. I staked out this area for approximately 3 weeks before I finally seen it. This creature was the gentleman who lived there's great aunt's goats, and I just ran into him by accident, and he asked me if I knew about creatures, and I told him I knew a little bit about them, but after I seen the tracks and followed him out there a great distance from where I was at. That was my first experience, and that creature looked just like a massive black, solid black German Shepherd. The head was maybe 3 times bigger than a normal German Shepherd. It wasn't a massive creature. I'm real close. It's 6 foot taller, or maybe a couple of inches taller, and I know that by the limb it was standing next to when it crossed the barbed wire fence that I was overlooking. Uh, I could not see its feet, but I could see its hot legs when it stood up. It ran across the field. It galloped. It didn't run. It like galloped across this field, and very strange, like a horse runs. It wasn't like a dog runs. And when it got to the edge, I watched it for probably 150 yards come through a field and clear field except for some sage grass in the middle. And that creature looked more flesh and blood than the other 2 dogmen I've seen. The other 2 dogmen I've seen, the most unmistakable one was the one the documentary was done on about Martin Grosenheim, my best friend for 43 years and my research partner for a great number of years, along with Ron Moorhead. in certain areas, and Martin Nunley accompanies us quite a few times himself. So, but that one was just Martin and myself, and we were up there, I believe, for his 29th anniversary of his encounter in 1993, a year after my first encounter with a Bigfoot. His was with two Dogmen and two Bigfoot, or it could have been Gugway. We're not sure, but we know it was two Dogmen. And that creature was like nothing I'd ever seen. It was nothing like the first one or second one I seen that looked flesh and blood. This thing was, it was laying in a creek bed right next to a ravine where a culvert came in, and it was in the middle of nowhere and land between the lakes, way back in an area not far from real close to where Martin had his encounter in 1993. And we're on a gravel road back in there going maybe 1 mile an hour, just barely enough for the truck to go. And I look out the window to the passenger side. That's where I was sitting. He's driving, and this blue mist was in this ravine, and it was kind of misty, but it turned into silver, and it was a creature laying there. And this creature was looking right at me. It was on all fours like it was about to pounce like a cat on me. It was in that type stance. It was focused completely on me. I had my window down on my passenger side, and had my arm hanging out, and I'm looking right at it. And this thing it turns to a silver gray color. You could see hair on the end of the tips of its fur. Its eyes were like tiny flashlights deep in its head. It had a big snout and teeth, and it looked right at me, and it had a huge mane like a lion under its neck. I could not see its feet, but I could see its posture, how it was crouched, like it was going to jump in the window and get me. And I'm only maybe 7 to 10 feet at the most from this thing. And I looked at it and was just shocked. I seen it looking at me with the evil look. And I looked over at Martin. He said, I see it too, Bubba. And about that time, it zapped us or infrasound us or whatever anybody wants to call it. I personally don't believe it's any infrasound. I think zapping is some form of radiation because it has an effect on you a lot of times like radiation does, I'm understanding. And, this thing got me, I felt really sick, and my legs were tingly, I had a headache, and my upper chest felt like something was standing on it. Martin, on the other hand, he was having a difficult time breathing. His tongue swelled up, his throat swelled together, and I thought I was going to have to pull over and drive because he could barely talk. And we got on down this little gravel road a little further. This thing comes out of the ditch, out of the creek area, the little ravine there that looked like a ditch, but it was actually a creek bed. It goes around the back of the truck. It goes to the left of us through a field, and we watched this thing go through a field. Martin said it glided across the road behind him as he looked through the mirror. And it goes to the left side of us on his side through this field. And we can see this thing walking and looking back at us. But at the same time, it's clear. You can see right through it. Even though it's a creature and it's full body everything, it was a natural creature, but you could still see right through it. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. And it looked back at us, and then it went up this hillside into the woods, and you could hear it breaking tree limbs and everything else as it went up that hillside. And, I was worried to death about Martin. He was so sick. The inside of our vehicle was sprayed with some type of spray or something. It was, I don't have my smelling sense like I did since I had COVID in 2020, but Martin was basically gagging. It smelled so bad in there. And by the time we got stopped at the end of this little gravel road, I was trying to get Martin to let me just drive because I thought that he was going to pass out. And we got on down the road, maybe a mile or two under some lighting situation next to a public restroom, and got him out and got him to walking around a little bit and gave him some water. And he got better, but he was sick for over a week with that. I got over mine that night. By the next morning, I was back to normal, but he had it for over a week. And whatever this thing sprayed in the vehicle or whatever it got in the vehicle, I didn't see it spray anything, but it also kind of coated the truck on the outside. Martin had to have it buffed, and I think he even had it wet sanded a couple times to get the whatever it was it put on the truck. But that's the strangest thing that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know. I've never seen a creature that was looked as real and was as real as this, but at the same time, it was transparent. So I don't know how that's possible, but I witnessed it, and he did too. And that was what the documentary with Small Town Monsters was all about.
Jeez, I'm Krill. That is straight up nightmare fuel. And yeah, like I said, I saw bits and pieces of that, and I do have to go back and watch it a little bit more. I do try to. I've been so grinding with my content, getting it out, but I do try to make sure that people such as yourself, Small Town Monsters, Jessica Jones, anybody that, Barbara Hartman, anyone that really supports Harley Owens, like what I do is I try to, when I do get a little bit of free time, I try to at least throw their stuff on in the background to help with their views. If I'm able to listen, then I definitely do. But if I'm working on, like, say, my own videos and stuff, I always do try to make sure that it's at least on in the background.
Sure.
So, yeah, because like I said, anyone that helps me out and invests their time in what I'm doing is I really try to make sure to invest that back.
I have to tell you, you mentioned Jessica Jones. Jessica's been nothing but super nice to me, and she's a very close friend of mine. I've been honored to be on her show 2 or 3 times. But she's a pretty good researcher herself up in North Georgia, that area. But Harley Owens, I mean, Harley and I are become very, very close. He's from my home state and where I live part of the time, Tennessee, and he reaches out to me all the time. And he started that group 2 or 3 months ago and made me his admin, and I didn't even know I was his admin. I said, well, thanks, Harley, but I'll do what I can. I got my own group, which is Bigfoot believers and other creatures, but I think the world of Harley. He's a great young researcher. It's good to see somebody like him out there because you don't see a lot of young researchers. You get into young Daniel from the UK. I think a lot of him. I've been on his show. He's 13, 14 years old, and it's good to see some of these younger guys. Harley, I think, is only 22, 21.
Yeah,
And,
he's 22. Yep.
Yeah, super nice guy. He sends me pictures all the time. He calls me up quite a bit, and I'm pretty involved with him, and I'm glad to be a good friend of his. And Scott Carpenter was my very close friend, and he's been gone a year this August. And of course, Harley's researching some of his areas, and with the permission of Scott's son, I think him and Scott's son are even doing some of that. But he just sent me a 3-toed track about a month ago of this creature that was following him from the trails back through there. And that's very strange, too, because in the last month I've had 4 3-toed tracks sent to me. And I've only seen one track like that before, and that was in Bowling Green, Kentucky, one that Beth Collinsworth sent me in probably about January of 23. But just in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've just got another one from Ohio yesterday. I've had 4 or 5 people sending me these 3-toed tracks, and they're very strange. It looks reptilian to me. They're asking me what I think it is, and I say, well, I don't know. I'm just making an educated guess. I would say reptilian. But some people say it looks Dogman. I've never seen a 3-toed Dogman. I've got numerous Dogman tracks, and there are some different ones. But I've never seen a 3-toed one. Have you?
No, I have not. And actually, before I respond to that, I did want to also just say with the German Shepherd that you had mentioned about, a lot of people don't realize that German Shepherds are one of the closest relatives to wolves, meaning that if a German Shepherd goes feral, it readapts extremely quick. And sure, it could be consumed by a pack of wolves, but also the wolves could bring that German Shepherd in as well, which is very interesting because, some of these encounters with massive German Shepherds could really just be a German Shepherd, meaning like Jessica Jones's female German Shepherd is massive and it looks like a werewolf.
Oh, yeah. I understand. That. What I actually seen in October of 21, no doubt in my mind, was not a German Shepherd. It was a big, huge, not tall-wise huge, but the head was just so big. There's no way a German Shepherd could have had a head this big. And the body was not tremendous like you would think it would be. It was a human type body, but I couldn't see its feet. It was down in the grass and sticks. I couldn't tell you what they looked like. I only caught a glimpse when I went over the fence. But the hot legs part, from the hot legs down, I couldn't see right past that area because of the sage grass and the sticks. Now, when it's crossed over the fence, I caught a glimpse of it, but it was difficult to tell. And plus, it was low light. That was right before dark, but I could see it good enough. I was 50 yards from this thing.
Oh, jeez.
I was,
That's
I was
close
on top
enough.
of I was on top of a large hill, overlooking this farm. There was a cattle trail that went up there, and I went through a gate and parked on it, and I was overlooking that field, and it came down to the corner where I was overlooking and crossed into the wood line right below where I was standing. It looked in my direction, but it never seen me.
Jeez, that's straight up nightmare fuel. And to go back to answer your question, when it comes to the three toes, I've had some of those sent in, but personally, I don't believe that has really anything to do with Dogman. The tracks that we have that we've submitted to our biologists and our science team and such, they honestly picture like your and I's foot, okay? It's got the claws where it does look
Sure,
like a
sure,
canine
yeah,
kind of, but its
right.
foot is built potentially like ours, meaning if it's going to be upright and able to stand upright comfortably like a baboon or something else, it's got to have some sort of structure to its foot, meaning if you look at like a bear's foot, sure, bears can stand up, but they're wide. It's not really meant for it to be comfortable walking around, whereas like baboons or primates, if you look at their feet, yes, very similar-ish to ours. So the three toes are very interesting, but I do know our tracker recently was able to debunk some that had come from Ohio, meaning that they were in the snow. And a lot of people don't realize with tracks and such in the snow and the sand, it's really hard because things end up coming with moisture and they
Oh yeah,
expand, they
yeah,
contrast. Yes. So
right.
Nuxian, Brother Nature, was able to actually figure out that these tracks that were submitted to us were actually blue herring tracks, because when he was looking at them, he's like, this doesn't look like it could be bipedal. Why is it walking in this strange position? Where would the other foot be going? And he starts looking at his blue herring tracks that he has, and yeah, sure enough, they match right up and the bird would hop. So obviously it wouldn't be walking potentially like someone like you and I bipedally. It's going to be hopping, which would then solidify why
Right,
that track
right,
range was kind of
right.
strange. Yes.
Yeah, I don't, I really don't know what this track belongs to. If you look at an EMU, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yes, like a bird or something. Yes.
yeah, it has a similar looking type foot, but this track is bigger than that, and you can tell that it's much heavier because some of these tracks are in the mud and they're probably, at least 2 inches deep.
Yes.
So
Or you had to have some girth. Yep.
yeah, it had a little weight to it, and they're not exactly alike, but they're awful close. And I really, I've got Dogman tracks, and I've got some, like you mentioned, that looks more like the longer foot with the
Yes.
toes, and I've got some Dogman tracks like that, and I've also got another kind of Dogman track that looks a little more like canine with the front toes, but it's longer. It's longer in the back and has a hop.
Yes. So it could still support itself. Exactly.
Right,
That's what I
right.
try to explain to people is that honestly, when the majority of the time when people are just seeing large canine tracks, it's just a large wolf or something large. Like I try to differentiate that to people is that there's a big difference between normal canine tracks or potentially unknown tracks, meaning hyena or dogman. There's a massive difference, okay? And like if you look
Sure.
at a Great Dane's a big dog, but again, its foot's not designed to consistently stand upright, so it's going to leave you a big footprint. But I mean, I personally think that the Dogman is quadrupedal and bipedal, meaning it prefers to potentially be on fours. I mean, any animal that
I
can be
agree
on all
with you. I
yes,
agree
any
100%.
animal that can be on all fours is going to do that over being bipedal. But bipedal would make you look more menacing, and then you could use your hands kind of like squirrels and raccoons, and it would give you, yes, an
Well,
advantage. Like look at
Kenny, I know this for a fact. I've been very lucky and very fortunate, and for something about me over the years, I've been around numerous Bigfoot, forest people. There is a difference, in my opinion. Forest people, Bigfoot, and Sasquatch. The forest people are so much different than the other two, even though they're very similar in looks. Those run on all four legs. They run on fours too. They don't run on. They don't just go around on twos.
Yes.
People don't realize that Bigfoot just doesn't walk around all the time on 2 feet. He also runs on 4.
All
So,
apes do, or I'm not saying it's an ape, but
yeah,
anything that, like, yeah, because I mean, even like humans have done that before in like ancient battles. They would run in like basically on all fours, like to
right.
intimidate people. And I don't know enough about Sasquatch. I think there's a lot of credence where it could be a missing link between humanity, like a Denisovian or a Neanderthal, but also there is some interesting aspects where maybe it has some sort of lineages to the Gigantopithecus. I don't really know. Could be a little bit of everything. The reason I just said that is I wasn't saying that the Sasquatch is an ape, but if it has a similar kind of frameish as that, then yeah, same thing. I mean, all those primates that are able to be bipedal as well, but same thing. Look at baboons. I mean, they are still more comfortable and would rather be on all fours than
Sure,
up on
yeah.
two
Well,
legs. Yeah.
I have I have my own belief, and I don't have a problem with anybody believing different than me. I never have. If somebody doesn't believe something, that's fine with me. I don't
Yes.
try to convince anybody. I have my own personal belief, 100%, and there's no changing my belief in this. I 100% believe that the forest people, which look so much like Bigfoot, but they're not aggressive, they're a friendly type uh, ancient people. They look, like I said, you can put a Bigfoot, Sasquatch. There's numerous different looking types out there. I don't know how many there are. I've personally seen 3, maybe 4 different types in my 30 years of doing this, and I think that the forest people are 100% ancient people. They're not an ape by any means. They're smarter than most human beings. They can read you. They know your intentions. They know your heart. If they see you with a gun or a camera, you're not going to see them very long because they don't trust you. So, uh, numerous members of their people have been over the years by hunters and things, and because they're frightened of them. Now, some of the other, they don't get me wrong, some of these other creatures, Bigfoot and Sasquatch, all these creatures aren't friendly. Some of these creatures, I have no doubt in my mind, you're probably, when they're looking at you, you're probably on their menu.
Oh yeah,
So
100%.
I don't think that all of them are just a good old backyard, buddy up friend. I mean, I've been in certain areas where these things are really aggressive, and I had no doubt in my mind they wanted to harm me, or at least scare me bad enough to get me out of there. I've been bluff charged many times, and I've been screamed at, and all type of things, and of course they're scared of us as we are of them. So they don't trust us. And it took me almost 4 years on the river in Tennessee to become very close to the Forrest family that I had there. They were absolutely awesome. They knew my language. They knew what words meant. They had their own language. They knew what American Native language was. And they also told me by pointing up, they came from another galaxy. So I don't know. They may have lied, but why would they? Oh, I spent almost 4 years with them, begging them to tell me their names, and I told them my name, and I learned a whole lot from those creatures and the time that I spent with them. They were actually friends to me. They were my friends, and they can speak. They can speak words. When I would leave, I would say bye, and they would say bye, bye. And I couldn't even see them all. They were in the thick kudzu. It looks like vines. It's real thick. That's where they lived, and they would say bye. They would mock me back when I'd leave, and it took me almost 3.5 years to get 2 words out of them, and 2 of them that I frequented regularly. They told me their name. The female's name was Aletha, and the big male that was about 7 foot, he wasn't full grown. His name was Tobias. So, no, they're not. There is no way possible they're nothing but an ancient human. So I don't know where they come from, but they have human characteristics and traits. And when I asked them, "Are you from the heavens?" and they pointed up to the galaxy when I asked that question, I don't know why they would have lied to me. They actually pretty much trusted me. Aletha touched my shoe or my boot all the time. She would reach out and touch me. I camped in the kudzu with them, 30, 40 feet from them. They weren't harmful. They weren't aggressive. They were kind and generous. They just didn't want you to harm them or their family. And they're not all like that, but the forest people are the ones that make the large X's in the woods. You see these big, huge trees that form X's. Some of them are green. They're broken at the bottom and they form X's. Large trees, or they can just be downfalls they made X's with on the ground and always also standing up against other trees. That's their marker. That's the forest people. Which later on I found out by complete accident that Dr. Matthew Johnson, some people think he's crazy. I don't. I just never even heard of Matthew Johnson. This has been going on for a lot of years when I heard about him. He calls them the Xanu, Xanue, and he said their symbol is the X. I think he experienced some of the same type of creatures I did, just 10 or 15 years apart from each other. So, I can go into that forever and I won't do that, but I want you to know that I will never believe that these creatures, these Bigfoot, are any type of ape. So that's my opinion.
That's excellent. No, I appreciate that. And that is some great research and clarity right there. And you definitely are a very educated individual on the topic. And I appreciate you taking time out of your hectically busy schedule to pop in tonight and hang out with us, my friend, on the Fox Den. So I do know I would love to get you back on here in the future at some point. But when you get a little bit more downtime, let me know.
Honestly, man, I think a lot of you and what you represent and the organization you stand behind, there's several people that's in your foundation and, with the North American Dogman Project. And, I don't know how they're all connected, but, Shane Michael Chris and, and even I think it's Todd down is he in Arkansas? Anyway, those guys are just super nice, and they hit me up occasionally. Shane Michael Chris are really close friends of mine. So, I feel like you're the same. So anytime I've got a moment, brother, anything I can do for you, I'll always be glad to jump the phone and help you out.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm. And I will see you on the next one.